Okay, Mr. Chair, it looks like our attendees are trickling in and we are now live.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town of Ajax Committee of Adjustment meeting for Wednesday, July the 26th. This meeting for the Committee of Adjustments is being held electronically and live streamed on the internet pursuant to the Committee of Adjustment terms of reference and meeting procedures. All regular practices and procedures of the committee continue to apply during this electronic meeting. If we encounter any technical difficulties, we may take a brief recess while they are resolved. Thank you for your patience in advance, and we'll now proceed with the meeting. I'll now like to call this meeting to order. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas, more specifically the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home of the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action in acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliations Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Before moving on to the application portion of this meeting, I'd like to confirm whether there are any disclosures of interests from the members of our committee. Seeing none, then we will carry forward. There are quite a few registered participants in tonight's meetings that are currently muted and will be participating with audio only. At the appropriate time, I will call upon those who wish to speak. If you have comments to share, please use the raise hand function, which will be added to the speakers list. When it is your turn, staff will prompt you to unmute yourself. A 5-minute timer will be started. Once you have concluded your comments, you will be muted, or if the timer comes first. Should you have additional questions or comments to share, you will need to re-enter the queue by raising your hand to request to speak again after all others have had the opportunity. If you are joining by phone, you may raise or lower your hand using *9, and you may mute or unmute when prompted by using *6. If you're using your keyboard navigation, you may raise or lower your hand using Alt and the Y key. Again, that's Alt as in Y as in Yankee. And you may mute or unmute when prompted by using Alt and the letter A key. That's Alt plus A as an alpha key. If you're not here to speak this evening and you're interested in instead encouraged to leave the meeting and view the live stream at www.ajax.ca/live. That's LIVE. If there are nothing further, then the first application, what I'd like to do is just do a quick review of the mandate of the committee. The committee is bound by the Planning Act to assess each application based upon its ability to meet 4 tests. That the application is minor in nature, it's desirable for the appropriate development or use of the lands, and finally, in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. The process for tonight's meeting will be conducted in the following manner. The applicant or agent will be called upon, and at their option, they may provide a brief description of the minor variance application they have applied for. The committee members may ask questions of the applicant and or agent, after which anyone with a direct interest in the application will be given the opportunity to speak either for or against the application using the process I've just described. Once a motion is put forward by a committee member, there will be no further input from the applicant or anyone having interest in the application. After a decision is made, a notice will be sent out and there will be a 20-day appeal period. The decision of the committee may be appealed to the Ontario Line Tribunal, or the OLT, by the applicant or a specified person or public body, as outlined in the Planning Act. Please note that third-party appeals are not permitted. After 20 days, the decision will become final and binding. If a building permit or other approvals are required, they may be filed during the appeal period. However, note that no permits or approvals will be issued until the appeal period is over, and then the decision becomes final and binding. A respectful decorum during this evening's proceedings is expected of all present at all times. Let me now take a moment to introduce you to the committee members presiding over the procedures this evening. And starting with myself, I'm the chair of the committee. My name is Wasif Ahmed. I've also have committee member Bernadette Santiago. I've got committee member Ken Elliott, and committee member Brian Hayes joining the meeting this afternoon. And we have from town staff, we have our legislative assistant, Sarah Moore, our planning advisor, Josh Estrella, and Eric Simpson, who's the Secretary and Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustments on behalf of the town. Let me now move on to the minutes and approval of the minutes from our last meeting, the June meeting. So could I seek a motion from any of my committee members? So Bernadette, I saw you first. So the motion would be to approve the meeting minutes from the June meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and Brian, I think I saw you second, so can I assume that you can second that motion?
I'll second adopt the minutes of June 28th, 2023.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Brian. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then I will look for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, motion is carried for votes in favor. Okay. So at this point, we will now move to the application portion of the agenda. And the first one that we have is as you can see on your screen, for those of you that are looking at the screen, is application A1823, which is to permit uncovered steps leading to an above grade entrance within the west interior side yard with a minimum setback of 0.1 meters from the interior sod lot line. Is the applicant here this evening, or an agent?
Mr. Chair, I don't see anybody who has raised their hand.
Okay, so let me maybe reiterate. Is there anybody here to speak for application A1823? That's for 39 McGill Drive. If you're here to speak for it, please raise your hand. And again, the raising of the hand procedure was as follows. If you are here and you're raising your hand, if you're joining by phone, it's *9. If you're using your keyboard, it's Alt and Y. Okay.
I don't see any listed participants for the applicants that were registered either.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. If that being the case, are my fellow committee members okay if we punt this to the bottom of the agenda to see whether the applicant or agent will be joining us a little bit later?
It's fine.
That's fine, Mr. Chair.
Okay, perfect. Town staff, any issues with that?
No issues on our end.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. All right, then we will move to the second application, which is application number A2023. That's for 64 Rumbelow Crescent. This application is seeking to permit a maximum area of 50 square meters for a platform more than 1.2 meters in height above finished ground level. Eric, can you confirm whether notice was served and whether any responses were received?
Mr. Chair, notice was served and no correspondence was received.
I appreciate you confirming. Thank you, Eric. Is there an applicant or an agent here to speak for application A2023?
Yep, I will just prompt them to unmute. One moment.
Of course. Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Balakaus Lakandasamy, the owner of this property, 64 Rumbella Crescent.
Okay, perfect. Welcome, Ms. Kandasamy. Are you able to perhaps give the committee a quick briefing on what your project is seeking to do and why you're here for a minor variance application?
Sure. Our backyard is a walkout basement and therefore it's above ground. And so we're seeking to build a deck on the main floor, which is kind of like the second level from the backyard. And so we want to make it about the full length of the house and about 16 feet out. And that will exceed I believe the permitted is 30 meters squared for a deck above 1.2 meters. So we're seeking for approval to get our 50-meter squared deck.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Are you also in receipt, as you may see on the screen? There is my town staff is projecting on the screen that there is a staff report prepared by the town of Ajax planning staff that does recommend approval for this project and for this minor variance, and subject to the following conditions. I'll quickly read them out for those of you that are on the phone. That the subject variance apply only to the property municipally known as 64 Rumbello Crescent, and as illustrated on the drawing submitted with this application, or this decision shall become null and void. Condition number 2, that the owner applicant maintain the existing drainage on the property, or the decision shall become null and void. And number 3, that the owner applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. Ms. Kalasami, can you confirm that you acknowledge and are in alignment with these conditions?
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll open it up to my fellow committee members to see if they have any questions for the applicant.
None.
Okay, I see none. Okay, then in that case, I will look to see whether there's anybody here to speak either for or against this application. Again, we're discussing 64 Rumbello Crescent, application
Mr. Chair,
A2023. Yep.
just,
go ahead.
just for assistance with the attendees, if I could kindly ask you to not raise your hand until the application of interest is being discussed, that will just help us determine who is here to speak for which application. Thank you so much. So that being said, Mr. Chair, I don't see anybody wishing to speak to this application any further.
Okay, thank you, sir, for confirming. And if that's the case, then I'll look to my committee members to see if there's anybody willing to put forth a motion for A2023. Brian, is that you first?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to put forth a motion to accept minor variance application A 2023 for 64 Rumbello Crescent.
Okay, and can I have a seconder? Bernadette, thank you. Any comments or conversation, discussion on the motion from town committee members? Seeing none, then I will look for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion has been carried 4-0. Thanks, Ms. Kandasamy. So again, the decision is subject to the 20-day appeal period, and the town staff will be back in touch with you. Thank you for joining. You're more than welcome to stay if you would like for the rest of the meeting, or you can drop now.
Okay, have a good evening.
All right, you as well. All right, thank you. Then we will move along to the next application on the agenda. This is again application or item C, application A2123. This is for 287 Ravenscroft Road to permit a minimum setback from the rear lot line of 0.4 meters for an accessory building or structure, to permit a minimum setback from the north interior side lot line of 0.4 meters for an accessory building or structure, to permit a minimum setback from the rear lot line of 0.1 meters for the eaves of an accessory building or structure, and to permit a minimum setback from the north interior side lot line of 0.2 meters, again, for the eaves of the accessory building or structure. Is the applicant here for A2123? Again, we're discussing 287 Ravenscroft Road.
Yes, Mr. Chair, they've just been prompted to unmute.
Good evening, sir. I'm here.
Hi, good evening. How are you tonight?
Not bad, sir. Thanks for
Awesome.
asking.
Can you introduce yourself to the committee?
Yeah, my name is Aaron Labi, and I'm the owner of 287 Ravenscroft Road, Ajax.
Okay, perfect.
Um,
And just before I hand you over the floor, Mr. Larby, I'm just going to do a quick check with my town staff to see whether there was notice served on this application.
Mr. Chair, yes, notice was served and there was one piece of correspondence which was provided to the committee.
Okay, and I acknowledge receipt of that as part of the committee members as well. Okay, so back to you, Mr. Larby. So I will hand you over the floor to you to perhaps maybe give us a quick briefing on the project or why you're here for seeking a minor variance application.
I said, this is a shed that I constructed at the back of my lots, and I think that I was hoping if the committee can accept my application for the shed to exist because it is more or less concreted to the floor, and moving it will be a bit difficult for me to do it. So I was just hoping if the committee will accept my application and just allow the shed to be, if it's possible.
Okay. Now, I do understand that you've done some work
Yes,
on
sir.
the eaves troughs. Can you tell us maybe a little bit more about that?
So I was directed by the officer in charge for me to do some corrections and adjustments to it, which I did, and I submitted to him. I think somewhere about 2 weeks ago. I think he included those adjustments and things on the application. He told me to cut the roofing, so the roofing was cut, and the where the drainage is, he told me to also put a drainage in there, so that one was also taken care of.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, well then I will look to my fellow committee members to see if there's any questions from other committee members for yourself.
For you,
Ken,
Mr. Chair,
first, Ken.
is it possible to be able to pull up the picture that's attached to the staff report that shows the distance to the lot line? Sorry, Sarah, I didn't know which attachment it was. I know it's one of the next ones. There's a picture. So this, just to confirm, this
Yes, sir.
picture is showing that this is the condition after the modifications were made?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions from the committee members? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, then I will look to see whether there's anybody here in attendance outside of the correspondence received in attendance to either speak for or against the application. Again, we're an application, sorry, A2123 for 287 Ravenscroft. Again, if you're wishing to speak, you can use if you're on audio only on the phone, *9. If you're using keyboard, it's Alt-Y as in Yankee.
Mr. Chair, there were no registrants to speak for or against this particular application.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sarah, for confirming. If that's the case, then I'll look to the committee to see if they have any other questions for the applicant here. And if none, would they seek any other discussion amongst ourselves? Seeing none, then I'll look to see whether the committee has anybody on the committee would like to put forth a motion. Ken?
Mr. Chair, through you, I would move that we approve application A2123, subject to the recommendations that were included in the staff report.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Brian. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, then I will look for a vote. All those in favor from the committee, please raise your hand. Okay, that's all four. So the motion has been carried. And Mr. Larby, your application has been approved. And again, it is subject to the 20-day appeal period, as I outlined at the beginning.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Larby. Again, you're more than welcome to stay, or you can drop it at this time.
Thank you so much, coach. I'll leave.
Okay, perfect. So then we will move to our next application. Again, we're on agenda item D as in David. This is application A1923 for 10 Flowers Crescent. This is to permit a total lot coverage of 16% and a maximum gross floor area of 79 square meters for all accessory buildings and structures, and to permit a maximum driveway width of 12.3 meters. And before I go further, town staff, can you please confirm whether this notice was served for this application?
Mr. Chair, notice was served, and as you're aware, various correspondence and opposition was provided to the committee.
Okay, and again, I acknowledge that that correspondence was received from town staff to the committee. And do we have anybody here wanting to that's going to be representing the application, either the applicant or an agent?
Yes, Mr. Chair, let me just prompt them to unmute.
Thank you.
Mr. Vithana, you should be able to control your audio at this time.
Hello, committee members. My name is Shane Vithana, and I'm the proud owner of 10 Flowers Crescent. First and foremost, I would like to thank you for your time and allowing me to go through this legal process. A little about myself. I'm very close with my family and love them very much, and for this reason, I'm building this ADU to provide a safe place for my loved ones to stay. At this very moment, my mother-in-law is sitting in Etobicoke General waiting for a transition home, and this is why I'm trying to accelerate this process. She has gone in and out from the hospital, and she was recently diagnosed with dementia. I want to do whatever I can in my power to help, and this is what I'm trying to do. I'm asking for the proposed ADU to be approximately 800 square foot in size, so I can add a 2-bedroom unit to accommodate an in-house PSW right beside my mother-in-law 24 hours a day. My basement will be occupied by my sister-in-law when she comes to visit her mother. I recently became a father, and my family is growing. This is why I require this dwelling for extra accommodation. This process has been challenging for my family and I, but we have been resilient, and we are looking to your support to improve the quality of life for our loved ones. The pushback I've been receiving is a common example of NIMBYism in our neighborhood, and this is the root problem to what is going on in our economy, affordable housing and senior home crisis. I have done extensive renovations and have taken out permits throughout the years. I am transparent with the town of Ajax with all my renovations, and they are all legal and to code, which as a result, I pay my fair share of tax dollars, which contribute to our town, its services, police, schools, playgrounds, waste management infrastructure. So again, we can have more affordable housing and affordable senior homes for the future. To be clear, the neighbors that have voiced their opinion after hearing about the minor variance are most likely arguing points that have nothing to do with the minor variance itself. I have heard concerns amongst neighbors in the vicinity that the project will trigger more renters coming into the area. Firstly, the construction of the ADU does not have any impact on the amount of renters in the area. This is an economic issue where many people find it unaffordable to buy real estate in this market. Therefore, they look to the rental market. Arguing against building an ADU does not influence an increase of renters in the neighborhood, as anyone could suddenly decide to rent their property out without question. Secondly, the perception of renters is very negative from the people that have voiced their concerns. I have people in my family that are renting. They are kind, hardworking Ontarians that are supportive of their local community. I love my neighborhood, and I believe everyone should have the equal right to live and work in the community they choose to. Second, most of these neighbors are voicing their disapproval of the ADU build itself. However, under Bill 23, I'm legally allowed to build an ADU. The minor variance is not about housing renters or whether I can build an ADU or not. Part of the minor variance is request for the footprint of the ADU to be 6% greater than what I'm already entitled to, which is minor in nature. This increase in footprint does not affect the neighbors as it is within my fenced backyard. The houses on this street are 2 full stories. The ADU is only 13 feet tall up to the peak of the roof. This will appear similar to a large backyard shed observed from street view. Furthermore, similar to the square footage of the ADU, the proposed parking spot is not visible to the neighbors as it is contained within my fenced backyard. Being granted this covered parking will also prevent further cars being parked on the boulevard, as most of the street parking is already consumed by the opposing neighbors on the regular. Also, this type of parking arrangement is not uncommon and can be found within this neighborhood. I have also heard some neighbors complain about property values dropping if I pursue this structure. This is incorrect. Technically, my property would be considered a 3-unit property, which in turn appreciates its property value because of its highest and best use. My house is a single-family detached house with a proposed ADU. It is not a 200-unit multi-residential building. I think this concern is a bit dramatic and there is no proof. Property values are based on the amount a willing buyer would pay to a willing seller. In this current market, there are many investors looking for passive income and would likely pay more for this property than the average single-family detached house.
Mr. Vitana, I'm going to stop you there just interrupt you just for a minute, just to let you know you have about 1 minute of speaking time left. So
No, thank you
ahead.
very much. Yep. To be honest, I have the right to do what I please to my property. Everything I am pursuing fits within the parameters of the zoning bylaws as well as it supports my family with a better quality of life. As mentioned earlier, what I am pursuing is also legislated by the Ontario Government of Canada Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act. I have the right as a homeowner to pursue this. Thank you. I would now like to present some material for clarification, please. Sarah, can you please display figure 1? This is the front elevation of the proposed ADU. It is a 1-story structure, has a 13-foot height span to the roof peak. This is also within the zoning height setback. Can we please go to figure 2? This is an example of a similar height span on a secondary structure found in a neighboring property. As you can see, the typical fence height compared to the structure to the secondary structure. Can we please go to 3A? Here is a neighborhood property with a similar parking arrangement. As you can see, there is a perpendicular parking pad, just like what I'm proposing. And also figure 3B. Here's a close-up. The parking arrangement is similar to what I'm proposing. It also has a covered fence, just like what I'm trying to propose. And lastly, figure 4. Here is the site plan showing my proposed parking arrangement with a covered fence. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vitana, and thank you for respecting the time as well. I will open up the access to the applicant here to my committee members for any questions. Ken?
I did not see the representation of the tree on the site plan information, so I'm looking for some context. The boulevard tree that has been questioned in some of the background materials located where, especially relative to the parking pad? Staff, are you able to help us with that?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I just thought the staff would jump into this. I did provide the distance between the, with pictures and the email to the city staff. It is actually within the parameters, so 2 meters away.
But is the tree to the left side of that picture?
See where the actual the proposed parking pad is, where the covered fence, the new board fence is. It's actually right below that, to the first window, the right side of the car, the depiction of the window over there. It's again, there's a clearance there that the tree is actually below that on the other side of the fence, on the boulevard. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant from the committee members?
One other question.
Sorry.
Is there a sidewalk on that side?
No, there is not. Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
You stated your intent at present is to, you have your family in the basement and you'd like to put your mother-in-law or your mom who's currently in the hospital in there with a PSW. And because of the additional unit, there's a requirement to add that additional parking spot. Correct? That's why the parking spot is going in.
That is correct.
Sorry, Brian, did you have a follow-up or were you?
No, that was it.
That was it? Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
thank you. Bernadette, please, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I just want to check with the applicant that the applicant is okay with the conditions outlined in the staff report, should this be approved. Is that correct?
So, Mr. Vitana, I'm not sure whether you're able to see the screen share, but there is a town staff report that my colleague is referring to that does outline 5 conditions. And for those of you that are just the benefit that are on audio only, I'll quickly read them out. That the total lot coverage and maximum gross floor area variance apply only to the property municipally known as 10 Flowers Crescent, substantially in accordance with the drawing submitted with this application, or this decision shall become null and void, that the maximum driveway width variance of 12.3 meters apply only to the area identified in figure 2 of this report, or this decision shall become null and void, that the additional parking space proposed in the rear yard of the subject property and as generally illustrated in figure 2 of this report be screened from public view, the street with fencing, to the satisfaction of the town, or this decision shall become null and void, that the owner applicant maintain the existing drainage on the property, or this decision shall become null and void. And number 5, that the owner applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. Mr. Vitana, are you able to acknowledge these conditions, and are you aligned to these conditions?
Yes, I am. I am aligned. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions from town staff? Go ahead, Ken.
My question through you, Mr. Chair, is to the owner. Is this property intended to be a permanent structure, or is this something that would qualify as a garden suite, which would be a temporary structure that has a limited life, which would be used for the accommodation of an elderly family member? Is the intent that this is a garden suite, or is the intention that this is a permanent accessory unit that will continue to be providing residential accommodation after it ceases to be used to support the family?
This is going to be a permanent structure, just to confirm. Again, it's going to house my family members, but again, it is a permanent structure, and it is, again, I don't know the difference between the garden suite and I didn't know there was a certain lifespan to a garden suite, but it is going to be a permanent structure fixed to that plot of land.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions? Checking one more time from the fellow committee members. Okay, then using and leveraging town staff help, I will look to see if there's anybody here to either speak for or against the application. Again, if you're joining by phone, you may raise your hand using *9. If you're using a keyboard, you can use Alt and the letter key Y as in Yankee. That's Alt plus the Y key to raise your hand if you have a question. While we're waiting to see whether people raise their hands, I will remind any speaker that is going to come on that there is a maximum 5-minute speaking limit. And with the number of people that are here in attendance, we'll see how many people register to or raise their hands to speak. Outside of the correspondence that, again, there's been multiple correspondences that have been received and voicemails and email correspondence that the town has forwarded and has been read by the committee members. If you have anything additional to add, you can. If you are speaking and the point that what you wanted to make has already been made by somebody else before you in sequence, then you are able to lower your hand, technical speak for Zoom, I apologize, using the same *9 on the phone, or the Alt plus the Alt plus the Y key is also used to lower your hand, just as it is to raise it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just waiting for you to wrap up those comments. We do have a couple of people in the queue, and we will start with Mary.
Okay. Hi, welcome, Mary. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Mary Corrigan Flanders. I live directly across the street from the applicant, and I just had a few things that I wanted to say about the application. I don't feel at all that it is minor in nature. Obviously, I don't think it's desirable for the area, but a couple of other things that I wanted to bring up. I did actually go and speak with the applicant as soon as we got the letter about it. And at that time, we were told that it was going to be a rental eventually. And he was actually going to be moving out, and the upper part of the house, the basement, would be a rental. And then the side house in the backyard would also be a rental. And we're quite surprised by that, because he never said anything to us about his ailing parents at that time. So I'm just a little bit taken off guard by that one. And also, I guess he kind of said it himself when he was saying that it could become a rental. So either way, we are concerned about the fact the runoff that would normally go into the backyard, the water that would usually seep into the ground, will become a problem. We had the floods in 2005, and every year, well, actually a few times a year, it is not uncommon for us all to be outside of our house cleaning out the drains because of the water plug ups. Even the applicant himself has been kind enough to help us clear out the drains so that we didn't end up getting flooding all the way up our driveways and into our backyards again. I humbly ask that you decline this application, as it is not something that is desirable for this neighborhood. And we are hoping that maybe this could happen in another area where there's more space, as we feel that it is going to be rentals only. And we moved here 20 some odd years ago, hoping to have a nice little quiet community, and to have all the extra cars and traffic. It's just kind of a lot for us. We moved here just for this area, thinking there's no way anything's going to change around here. Just wanted our little quiet time. And really, I guess that's all I have to say, other than we do not feel that it's minor in nature at all. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you for those concerns that you've raised, Mary. Just so I can get a handle geographically, you said you're directly across. Is that 23 Flowers Crescent or 21?
Actually, I'm 19.
Oh, okay. So you're at the corner there. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Understood.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All
Okay,
right.
Mr. Chair, I had to take myself off mute there for a moment. Next we have to speak is Karen. Please go ahead.
Okay, please, Karen, go ahead. Good evening.
Good evening. Are you able to hear me?
I am.
Thank you very much for confirming. Good evening, Mr. Chair and fellow committee members and my fellow community members. I would like to point out that I am the owner of 12 Flowers Crescent, which is the neighboring property to 10 Flowers Crescent. And it seems to me, based on what the applicant said in his opening statement, that the sole basis this application is relying on for approval boils down to the provincial bill, Bill 23. If we remove this bill from this application and from the equation in its entirety, then the requested minor variances do not meet the rest of the established requirements when reviewing minor variances. And Mr. Chair, you were kind enough to point those out at the beginning of the call. Just for everybody's reference, they are number one, that the variance is minor in nature. Number two, it is appropriate and desirable for the area. Three, in keeping with the purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw. And four, in keeping with the purpose and intent of the official plan. The committee has heard the community's concerns around the fact that these requested variances are not minor in nature, and it is clear that they are not appropriate or desired in the area based on those numerous concerns that have been raised. It also does not keep with the intent of the zoning bylaw for this neighborhood, which is not zoned for apartment or additional dwelling structures that would enable human habitation, and further does not, as a result, keep with the purpose and intent of the original plan. My question to the committee and to the town is this. Bill 23 has been in place and in effect for almost 8 months now. What has the town done to prepare for this bill? Bylaws have not been updated, and now, as we see with this application, the existing bylaws are attempting to be manipulated. It is like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. None of my correspondence with the town has afforded me an answer to this question, and as a result, I'm raising it here. Working in the regulatory compliance field myself, I am very well aware of the work effort that is required to implement legislative changes to ensure conformance and compliance. So what has the town done in order to do so? It seems that since this is the first application to build an additional dwelling unit on a lot with an existing home, this will be precedent setting. Without proper governance and strategic implementation plans, it seems that the town, and as an extension, the committee, may be making the rules as they go. In my opinion, this is irresponsible as well as negligent. So I implore the town to first develop a strategy that thoughtfully and carefully allows conformance with Bill 23, while also respectfully considering the concerns of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for that input. Sarah, were there others?
Yep, sorry, I'm juggling multiple things.
No,
here.
of course.
So next on our list is Yolanda. Please proceed.
Good evening, Yolanda.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay.
So just sorry, Yolanda, just before you go on, just quickly, Sarah, just reset the timer for us. I appreciate it. Thank you, Yolanda. Go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to share my comments. I do echo the concerns of my neighbors. And so I just wanted to point out some things. So the crucial concern here is that the applicant is requesting relief be granted to build this structure and expand his driveway. So with respect to the size of the accessory unit, this is a significant increase than what is permitted, and it will be an eyesore that impacts the aesthetic of the neighborhood. This will be clearly visible to people on the street, as well as all the adjacent houses that share the backyard space. Once this is built, it cannot be removed. Therefore, it is crucial that you strongly consider the voices of the people that occupy this community now, the ones impacted by this visual blemish. Widening the driveway is impractical and would encourage the occupants of the units to park on the road, since you would not be able to move cars into and out of the driveway without moving the other cars. This cannot be compared to a single family home with multiple cars on a long or narrow driveway. If my family owns 4 cars and we have to move one car to get another one out, then I am able to call my family member or move the car myself. I can just, if you have 3 different occupants utilizing the proposed driveway, which may not happen today, but may happen tomorrow, it is not realistic to expect that they would always manage their parking arrangements. Honestly, ask yourself, would you be okay living somewhere where your neighbor could call you at any point of the day or night to move your car so that they could come or go? If there's an emergency in the middle of the night and you have to leave, are you really going to wake up your neighbor at 3 o'clock in the morning because their car is in the way? To solve this problem, what do you think these occupants would do? They will park on the street for convenience. Now, the applicant did state that his intention for this unit is to have it available for family members. However, I do argue that this is an irrelevant point because there is nothing stopping him from making changes to these plans and proposals after things are approved and things have been implemented. With Bill 23, it was passed very recently. And I think it's important to note that it's been heavily criticized by various groups, including city officials, social and environmental groups, business owners, and citizens. And there have already been calls to have the bill repealed. So it is not unreasonable to expect that it may be repealed or amended in the foreseeable future. Therefore, making allowances solely based on this law should be considered unwise. It does not take into account the long-term consequences of overturning many standards already in practice. It is also important to note that at the beginning of this meeting, you recited the land acknowledgement, but the Chiefs of Ontario and First Nations opposed this bill. This bill is not consistent with the efforts of truth and reconciliation. We do need to protect the neighborhoods that we have. I've lived in Ajax since I was 3 years old, and the reason why I moved into this particular neighborhood is because I wanted to provide a similar experience to my children. I'm fortunate to offer this life to them. I did not sign up for a neighborhood that is high in density with lots of renters and lots of traffic. If I wanted that, I would have gone to Toronto, I would have gone to Scarborough. And on a final note, earlier this afternoon, most of us received a document prepared by Sean Jeffrey. And in this document, the town planners indicate that they support the application for the variances, and in the concluding paragraph, they state, the relief requested is quote unquote minor in nature and desirable for the appropriate development and use of the property. But my question is, who determines that the application is minor in nature and desirable and appropriate? These are subjective terms and cannot be defined by a small team of town planners who have no personal investment in the neighborhood and are not representative of the individuals that live there. So regardless of what the planners recommend, I implore you to take the time to consider the voices of the impacted community, because we are here and telling you that they do not speak for us and they do not represent us. We are here expressing our concerns to you personally and expressing that it is important to us. We are telling you that this is not to be considered minor in nature, and it is not appropriate for the official plan, which really has been in place for nearly 40 years. Now, there is the law, and I understand that, but there's also what is right. And oftentimes these two things do align, but in this case, I believe they do not. And if you are going to represent the people of Ajax in good faith, I do believe that the application should not be supported. Thank you for hearing my comments.
Appreciate that, Yolanda. Thank you. Some good points made by all three speakers so far. Sarah, are there others? And again, if there are, please, I'll just implore you to just think about whether the points that you're about to make, if they've already been made, and if you have something new to add, please raise your hand.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Philip is next on our list.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, Sarah. Philip, can we do an audio check?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you, and good evening to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair and the rest of the committee. I appreciate your time and consideration in this matter. Obviously, it was mentioned that if I'm repeating anything that was previously said, I'm not going to go over the same old ground, but I do just want to add that I am in opposition of this for all of those reasons mentioned. And also just wanted to point out a few things that appear to be presented in bad faith, especially to what my neighbor Mary Corrigan Flanders was saying regarding the occupation of the matter. Now, the applicant's opening statements had a lot of verbiage that, quite frankly, I think are moot points. Like Yolanda mentioned, regardless of who's occupying the property at this point, you know, if it's for family, of course, that's a noble venture. We would all like to look out for our family members if we were able to. But quite frankly, when I myself received notice in the mail and went over to speak to Shane, as we otherwise have a pretty cordial relationship, you know, we've lived next to one another for a few years. He also mentioned that this is something that he does. It's, you know, it's not his first time doing it, so he knows how to get the right permits in place. He knows how to get the right people in place, and then I shouldn't be concerned. I appreciated him sharing his comments, and I told him, okay, I have to think about this. I then went to neighbors and was speaking with them, and it became clear to me that this is not going to be right for the area, at which point we were met with the applicant again, who immediately took on a more hostile tone, saying that he's, you know, accusing us of trying to stop us from supporting his family and seemingly changing the purpose of the construction on a whim. So I believe that this application is being presented in bad faith at the moment. And further to what was said regarding Bill 23, this bill was passed in a rush very shortly and to an overwhelming opposition within the province. And it is safe to say that it might have a short-term future as, you know, remaining in effect. If this goes up, it will basically be taking advantage of a moment that was a flash in the pan for our province. It is funny that we acknowledge the lands that that we're on right now, but then at the same time, because our provincial government supports just shredding the green belt and any other land to make money on, it's clear that this is not for any altruistic purpose, but something driven by financial gain. I personally don't support this. Now, I've spoken with this neighbor and I've said in the past, I said, I believe you should be able to do what you want with your property. But I draw the line when it's building another property on the same land. If he were to build an addition to accommodate his family and also use his existing already completed self-contained basement unit to house a personal support worker, I would have no problem with that because I understand how important it is to look after family. But this, I believe is being presented in bad faith, and I don't support it. And I believe it sets a very bad precedent for the neighborhood and is also discriminatory in nature against similar properties in the Crescent that don't have the lots or don't have the driveway space because they're not corner lots to be able to do this. Furthermore, as was mentioned, the minor variance, the driveway is over double the standard size. I don't understand how that could be considered minor. To go from 10% to 16% for the lot occupation is also significantly more than what would reasonably considered as a minor variation. That's all I have to say on the matter. I thank you for your consideration, and I implore you to reconsider the decision in the favor of the overall community.
Okay. Thank you, Philip. The one thing that I'll just point out, and Philip, not just to you directly, but I think others may have a similar concern. The staff report, a copy of which you're seeing, if you're seeing the screen share from the town staff, it does recommend approval. It has been put together by the planning team at the town, but myself and other committee members represent the community at large, and we are not necessarily swayed by the fact that the town staff has put together a planning recommendation. It is something well within our control, and there's been many precedents where we have and can go against the recommendation from town staff. So just because they've put forth that recommendation doesn't mean that that's something that we need to stick to. So it's not a matter of reconsideration of the decision. The decision has not yet been made. So the vote will indicate that in a few minutes, of course.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Chair. I do understand, obviously, it's still, the decision will still rest on you and the committee. It's just a little discouraging for my neighbors to see people from the town already showing up to spray paint the curb and spray paint the driveway as if this was a foregone conclusion, which is why I understand some people may be upset in that regard and bringing this up in such a way. Thank you. That's all for me.
Okay. Well, thank you for your commentary. Again, if you have something new to add to the discussion here, you can raise your hand electronically.
Mr. Chair, of those who have not yet spoken, we next have Felice.
Okay. Good evening, Felice. I'm not sure if you're still on mute.
She is unmuted.
Okay. Felice, are you still there with us? Okay, maybe we'll come back to Felice, Sarah, if that's okay.
Yep, no problem. Oh, she's just unmuted her. She's just muted herself, so maybe she could try again.
Felice, we can't hear you. I'm not sure if you can hear us, but we can't hear you.
Okay, I will leave her in the queue, Mr. Chair, and we will go to our next speaker. The next speaker is Tracy.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, Tracy. Good evening and welcome.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Tracy Westlake, and I reside at 51 Flowers Crescent. So I'm around the corner from the proposed property. My comments really have been covered by most of our neighbors so articulately. The only thing that I really wanted to add, Mr. Chair, into the committee is I wanted to comment on something that the applicant had indicated, that we are, the neighborhood has a negative connotation when it comes to renters. And I really want to clarify that because, first of all, I've been a renter myself. I have 3 adult children, all whom have rented. My family, my parents who are no longer with me, left Ajax and moved into a rental community in New Brunswick. I have no issues with renters whatsoever. My experience has been when we have owner-occupied housing that then becomes a rental property, those landlords are not associated with any type of property management company. And as a result, the renters, duly understood, don't typically take care of the property, expecting the landlord to do so. My concern is if this particular dwelling is supposed to be for a family, as the applicant has indicated, although that is debatable based on some conversations he's had with some of our neighbors. However, if so, it will not always be, because it's a permanent structure, it will not always be the home for his ailing mother. When it turns into a rental property, what recourse do we have as property owners here on Flowers Crescent if and when the property starts to fall below standards? And then to the comment about the NIMBYism, I have to say that's rather insulting. When I purchased this house with my husband 19 years ago, I sought out this neighborhood clearly because of the design, the lot size, the single dwellings. I chose a much older neighborhood for my purchase in South Ajax because I felt it had already gone through all development necessary and that there was not going to be any undue or at this point, I don't even have the words for it. I chose this neighborhood understanding how the zoning worked. And I feel that if this is approved by the committee, that this is a betrayal on something that I bought into 19 years ago. So I thank you for listening to me. I hope I've kept the emotion out of it, but I hope that we as a committee or a community on this crescent have stated why this is so important to us. So I thank you again for hearing our concerns, and I implore you to vote against this.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Appreciate that. And for everybody that's participated so far. And I know this can be an emotional time as well. So I can definitely appreciate the feedback that's coming in. Sarah, is there anybody else registered?
We're going to, yes, there's a couple, but I'm going to pop back and give Felice another try just before I continue on the list. So Felice, you've been prompted to unmute. You've unmuted. Please feel free to go ahead.
I'm not sure if you can hear us, Felice. We can't hear you.
She's still having audio difficulties. I might recommend that perhaps she try calling in with the telephone number included in the email, and perhaps we may be able to connect with her that way. So I'll still keep her in the queue.
Yep, that's good advice. Thank you, Sarah.
Next on the list is Chris Todd.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. Good evening, Chris. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. My peers in the neighborhood have done a great job covering off, I think, a number of the issues. I did want to highlight a couple of things. The example that the requester used about another driveway in the neighborhood that was developed in a similar manner. I think it's extremely important to point out that that is in effect a non-functioning driveway. Those vehicles are left there for a significant period of time. This is not a driveway that is being used on a regular basis by people within the house. And I think it's extremely important to think about that. One of the other neighborhood members pointed out that this is looking at over doubling the requested width of the driveway. And because it's perpendicular, you will not be getting cars in and out of that on a regular basis. And also it was highlighted, you will see people just parking on the road. It is a corner. Can be a dangerous corner, even without a lot of vehicles there. But we will definitely be seeing a higher degree of vehicles parked there. And even using the example that the requester had used of the other driveway, those vehicles in that driveway, even the ones not parked in the perpendicular one, are consistently butting out onto the roadway. So if you've got a car 2 or 3 feet sticking out into the road and you come around that corner, we know what can happen there. I agree with the requester that people should be able to do with their property as they see fit. But I think the important thing to highlight for everyone is it should be within the grounds of the bylaws. We should not have to ask for a variance, especially, I know your term is minor, but when you're looking at saying, I need to more than double something, I don't think anybody would consider that's a minor consideration. And then also with the total lot coverage going to 16% from 10, that is a significant increase as well. That is not a minor amount. I would request that the committee members vote against this. And I do feel the other thing, this particular area is an extremely high water table area. For anybody that's ever dug a fence post in this area, you don't have to go down too far before you find standing water. This particular area on that one fence line is one of the prime suspects there. And by paving and putting in a house in the backyard, you are significantly reducing the natural erosion control that is going to be there. You will be impacting fences that will be forced onto the road. You will be dealing with higher issues. And the other thing I just want to highlight is that everybody knows what we've gone through in the last few years from a winter perspective. There is nowhere to put any of this snow for these driveways. You will be forcing this, well, not forcing, anybody in this house will be moving their vehicles out onto the road because there will physically not be any area to put the snow to move these vehicles. So that's all I wanted to say on that. My neighborhood friends have already commented on a number of the other points, but I want to thank you for the time. And again, request that you do vote against this application.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Chris, just for my records and just orientation, you're on Flowers Crescent as well. What house number?
No, I'm on Windibanks. I'm kind of kidding.
Oh, you're on the other side. Okay, I got you. And what house number?
13.
13. Okay, understood. Thank you. Thanks for your feedback.
No problem.
Okay, Mr. Chair. Next on our list is Neil. Please proceed, Neil. Oh, looks like Felice is with us.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh,
yes.
we can now, Felice. Good evening. Okay. Thanks for the perseverance.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that, everyone. I just wanted to ask, we're talking a lot about minor variances.
Sorry, Felice, I apologize. I'm interrupting you. Sarah, would you just reset the timer for us?
Oh, my apologies, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the reminder.
Okay, sorry, Felice. I apologize for that. Go ahead.
It's okay. We're talking a lot about minor variances, and I'm just trying to understand, does the town have guidelines on what's considered minor versus major? Because when we look at the documents, some of the stuff is increasing by, over 33%, over 100% for the driveway. So what makes up a minor versus a major?
There's no objective measure on it. It is what is deemed by the committee as minor. Based on, and that's why the town puts together the report, or the planning staff puts together the report, and the committee members in our due diligence will read through the report, look at all the facts, look at all the correspondence. Part of that includes you being here and telling us your side of the story in terms of why you support or don't support the applications. I'll let you continue.
So what we're saying then is a floor area increase of over 33%.
Yep. No, we heard that. We heard that loud and clear. Loud and clear.
And to me, I'm objecting to this because I also do not believe it is a minor variance. I think we need some guidelines as to what is classified minor versus major.
Yeah, that's left up to the committee. So that's going to be left up to the committee members And obviously the report plus the feedback that we're hearing this evening.
Yeah, and then we're also including 2 homes on 1 property, which to me is not a minor change. Right?
I hear you.
So yeah, I understand, but I just think that in light of what everyone is objecting to is the fact that this does not appear to be minor, right? It's and also too, it's permanent. Like someone mentioned before, once we make these changes, they're permanent. They're not going anywhere, right? So we need to make an informed decision. I think we need better guidelines. I just think we're jumping into this very quickly with not with, yeah, it's breaking ground. It's like we need, I think, more I don't know. I just think we're jumping into this, and once we do that, we're setting a precedence, right?
Okay. No, understood. Anything else, please?
Nope.
Okay. Listen, again, thank you. You're a trooper for continuing to be here. So I really appreciate it and your feedback. And the committee will keep it in mind.
Okay, Mr. Chair, next on the list is Daniel.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can. Daniel, good
Yes,
evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I live at 1 Harbor Crescent, so I have this exact same property. You would think I'd be jumping for joy, but my concern is, and this could be future, and if MPAC deems that this property of the applicants is more valuable, then in turn, would my property be more valuable, and who's going to pay my increase in taxes? Like, you know what I mean? So, as I think it's a little bit of presumptuous for the applicant to think that everybody should be happy-go-lucky that their property value is going to go up. But what if I don't wish to spend another $2,000 a year on property taxes?
I'm sorry to interrupt. A very subjective comment by the applicant. I can assure you that the committee members look at facts and not not by the applicant, not by other people on the call that have spoken in terms of opinions. Something like that is unqualified to me as a committee person, as a chair, and I can tell you that doesn't really weigh in. So it's really going to be around the facts of the matter.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Sarah, who's next?
One moment, just flipping to screens here. I actually don't see anybody else in the queue, so perhaps you'd like to do another call out.
Okay. Once again, if there's anybody here either on audio or on the Zoom webinar that is either here to speak for or against application, we're on A923 or on 20 Flowers Crescent. If you're on the audio on the phone only, you can raise your hand by using *9. If you're on the computer, the keyboard navigation, it's Alt and the letter Y as in Yankee, and you'll be registered, and then we'll acknowledge you. And again, if you're thinking about speaking, if you've been around for for most of this evening, you hopefully would have heard the comments and the feedback that the committee members have already received from other committee members. If you have something new to add, please feel free to raise your hand.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we have 2 in the queue, and it's over to Vincent.
Okay. We can't hear you yet, Vincent. I'm not sure whether you're speaking, but I do see you as muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Good evening and welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. This is really just a general question, probably for everybody, and not only this street. Will the address at number 10 be changing for the separate unit? For example, a 10A, a 10B, and will this be happening on other streets when a similar project commences? Okay. So basically my question is the numbering scheme either of the street or the address.
Okay, I will give the town staff an opportunity to answer if they can. I will highlight, though, however, with all due respect, Mr. Vicini, that your question doesn't have anything to do with the minor variance application in front of us.
Well, it's
So I'll
separate.
just
If you don't mind though, it's a separate address. Will it be numbered separately?
I don't know, so I will pass that along to town staff. So town staff, do you want to comment on that?
Through
Sorry, Josh, you're a little echoey there.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, can you repeat that? I just had to step out for a second.
Yeah, no problem. Eric, the question was from the audience was really around the new building, the new ADU. Does this actually have a different address, civic address? So will it be, for example, 10A Flowers Crescent? How does the numbering system work?
Yeah, so that's entirely up to the owner. There's no requirement for it to have a separate address. Like currently speaking, people who have basement apartments can ask for a different address if they wish to, but it's not a requirement. So it's something that would be determined at the building permit stage.
Okay, which obviously we're yet to go through. So thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. So there's the answer to that. Nope, no problem. Thank you for participating. All right, Sarah, you said we had one more?
Yep. Next on the list is Roseanne. She's been prompted to unmute. There we go. Please go ahead, Roseanne.
Roseanne, in case you're speaking, we don't hear you yet. Again, Roseanne, we don't hear you yet. I do see you as possible muted. Okay, we'll do attempt number 3. Roseanne, if you're speaking, we don't hear you.
No, and unfortunately, she's muted herself again. So I will watch for her to pop back up in the queue. But next on the list, we have Rena.
Can you hear me?
We can. Good evening to you, Rena. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I'm at 20 Flowers Crescent, and I just have a question about the driveway. If someone was to put a rental place in their backyard, do they have to have a dedicated driveway that someone can drive in and out of unobstructed? Is that part of the law?
I think I can handle this one, town staff. So let me know if I have this incorrect. But I believe that what they are legally need to provide is a parking spot. So whether
I just lost you.
and on the property itself, on the subject property. Eric, did I get that right?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, you froze there, so I missed some of that.
I missed it too.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now consistently?
Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
you're good.
Yeah. So, Serena, the answer was really, again, the question was, do they need to provide a parking spot? So it is, do they need to provide a driveway spot? So it's just parking spot is what they need to provide, whether it's blocked, whether it's in the garage, what have you. So that's what they actually would have to provide. And that's why the application has that perpendicular portion, parking spot portion on the driveway.
Okay. Okay. Because I can see that it could be a parking spot, but it could not be a driveway as I would expect to have if I had a rental place. Okay. I didn't think it worked very well for a driveway in that spot. And I'm just hoping you cannot approve this because of the driveway issue as well as whatever the neighbors have said as well. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for your input. Appreciate that, Rena. All right, Sarah, do we have anybody else?
We do. We have Carl next on the list. Please go ahead, Carl.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Good evening to you, Carl. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for allowing me to speak. So as others have said,
sorry, Carl, just before you go on, can you just help us orient ourselves? Are you on Flowers Crescent? And if so, what number?
Yes, I am at 33 Flowers Crescent.
Okay, please continue.
roughly
Sorry for the
across the
interruption. Yep, I got you.
Okay. Yeah, so I definitely won't repeat what's already been said quite eloquently by my neighbors. Just wanted to preface what I'm going to say by somewhat covering ground that was very well stated. I think Phil had mentioned, and a few others, that we are all in agreement. I mean, all of us are sensibly in agreement that there is nothing more important in life than caring for our family members and our loved ones, and doing everything we can to supportively provide for them, right? Especially our elderly parents who are absolutely in need of that support when they become ill. My concern, however, is that this, in the context of an objective assessment requiring equally objective decision making on the basis of impartial reasoning, is that this is an appeal to sympathy, right? At the risk of being insensitive, this consideration should not weigh in any respect in a discussion of whether or not this proposed variation ought to be approved. I understand the appeal to sympathy. It appeals to me directly as a father, as a son. However, it absolutely should not be in any way clouding the judgment of a committee responsible for objectively and impartially determining how this proposed variation may potentially impact an entire community of members who all of whom have similar commitments to family members, similar commitments to loved ones. And I fear that this might set a precedent that similar decisions would be made on the basis of non-objective, non-impartial considerations. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Thanks for that input. All right,
Okay,
Sarah.
Mr. Chair, I am going to re-prompt Roseanne again just to see if we could test her audio, as I don't see anyone else in the queue.
Okay, can we make Roseanne the last, please, Sarah? Is that
She is.
possible?
There's nobody else,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So she's the only one. She has unmuted, but again, if there's no connection, I'm not sure if anybody else in the household or herself might be able to phone in on the telephone number that was provided in the email. That might be, oh, we have somebody else here. Nope, that's not from the same address. Okay, so perhaps she will try to do so while I let the next speaker in. So the next speaker, Mr. Chair, is Kevin.
Yep. Kevin, in case you're speaking, the committee can't hear you.
He's been prompted to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go. Yes, good evening, Kevin.
Hi, all right, Mr. Chair. I just want to add a little bit because most of what's been talked about, my neighbors have covered that I wanted to say, but
sorry, Kevin. Just help us orient ourselves. What you're on Flowers Crescent as well? What number?
I am on 7 Winded Banks Drive.
So you're on the other side. Okay, got you. Okay,
And
please continue.
Behind number 12.
Okay.
So this is like for this building, if it's allowed to go to the variance with 79 meters squared, would impact my personal space, like in the sense of my view. My current view goes up between 12 flowers and along the fence line of 6, 8, and 10 Flowers Crescent. By putting a new structure in, that's going to take my sight line and put like the new roof and a new building, a large building. So I'm definitely opposed to the variance of adding it, like the 16% increase. If the ADU is supported and the building is going in, at least if it's 16% smaller or the original 10% that's allowed, it can be shifted to the east, further off the west fence line, which would not impede my vision from my backyard, from my hot tub, and from my deck, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to make sure that the committee understands that yes, there's adjacent properties that are directly affected, in both like 12 and 8 flowers, but also on Windibanks, you're also impacting the personal space of, or the use of the property.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for that input. All right, Sarah, were we able to get?
Nope, but we do have somebody else in the queue. Mike and Lynn, please go ahead. They've been prompted to unmute.
Oh, hi.
Hi there.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, I'm Lynn Mills, and I live at I'm here with my husband. We live at 7 Harbord Crescent.
Okay.
And we're the original owners of the house. We've been here 38 years. Really, I just wanted to make the comments about our concerns about the property. And I know the owner's saying it's going to be for family. But like other people have commented, it could, of course, down the road be turned into rental property. And that's really a big concern. I wanted to mention, we've been retired, we're in our 70s, but I used to work for community care, the in-home respite. And quite a few years ago, with one of my clients on Hurley Road, I didn't realize, because I always parked on the road, and I ended up getting a parking ticket. And when I went up to the town to pay it and talked to the bylaw officer, he said the reason it started doing parking just on one side of Hurley was because there were so many houses rented down there and so many cars that it had an emergency. A fire truck couldn't get down the street. So in relation to this, I've already been concerned, or we are starting to get concerned, because I see other areas already in Ajax that have turned into rental communities. I have a friend, her mom's one of the few people that live on the street that are the homeowners. Most of the properties are being rented, and not just to one family. They're putting families on the ground floor and the basement. And like the other lady that said about being in rented property, it's nothing about people who rent. It's about turning this neighborhood into a rental community. Because I think once this, like someone else said, if it sets a precedent that there's going to be buildings going on people's property, they not only can be renting their house to 2 separate families, they can also be renting the unit on the property. They could have 3 families, and all the reasons why it doesn't work, because like you say, for the cars, for the drainage, for the fact it's a residential neighborhood. So, I'm behind what everybody said. This is what it is and what it should be. And the other thing, another speaker, when he was saying about for the owner wanting to do this for his mother-in-law, all the families I ever went to, and there were a lot over the 12 years I worked for community care, people did have their loved ones, but they had it set up in the house. And whether the other gentleman said, whether the back of a sunroom or something, everybody accommodated their loved ones in their home. So not to say that he's saying he wants a separate unit, but there's too much chance that will turn into being rental. So anyway, that's all I had to say, and I knew I had to get it out. So thank you.
Well, no, thank you for your participation. I really appreciate that. All right, Sarah.
Mr. Chair, that concludes our speakers list.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that and the patience of everybody. And for those of you that participated, whether it be, by coming and speaking to us live here or through the correspondence that you've sent or the voicemails that the committee has received and listened to already prior to the meeting. So thank you for participating in that. I'll look to my committee members to see if there's any other discussion on this application amongst the committee members. Okay, seeing, sorry, Ken, I missed you there. Go for it, please.
Mr. Chair, through you, I have a question for staff. Is it possible to be able to look at the staff report, or are we just referring to the comments of the community?
I believe we can look through the staff report if you, that's what you choose, Ken. So was there a particular page?
There is. I'm looking to page 4 of the staff report.
Okay.
I wondered if Eric might be able to.
Through the
help
chair,
us.
do you know the page number in the agenda package?
I can pull that up, Sarah. Give me 1 second.
Ken, was there a specific heading to a paragraph that would help me out?
It starts off the sentence that says, due to the large lot size of the subject property. At the top of the head page, it said maximum accessory building lot coverage and gross floor area variance. It's the second paragraph.
Right there, Sarah.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
So
go ahead, Ken.
What I wanted to find out through staff, because this is their report, there's a sentence in here that says, it is important to note that if the building addition was proposed to the existing dwelling in order to accommodate the additional dwelling, a variance for increase of lot coverage or gross area would not be required. And I wanted to make sure I understood that right, that the permitted lot coverage in this residential zone is 45%. And what we're dealing with this increase is taking it to 32% lot coverage. It isn't exceeding the 45% lot coverage. It is in conformity with the bylaw. Do I understand it correctly that it exceeds the lot coverage for an accessory building? Is that
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. The building itself, because it's an accessory building, is subject to different provisions for coverage. So that is what the variance is for. However, when you look at the overall lot coverage, which is 45%, all of the buildings together proposed are well under the 45%.
okay? So we're talking about, this would be an increase on the property for the accessory building and the main building to something that is still below the permitted lot coverage for this zone.
That is correct.
Okay. The second part of it, I do get confused about this driveway width of 12.3. And I finally understood that it's because it's perpendicular. So my question is, in the consideration of the application, was any other configuration aside from a perpendicular plan considered as viable or possible? Is there some way, respecting the location of the tree, that it could be configured so that there is you would have the 3 functioning parkways?
So that question, Ken, would be to staff?
Yes.
Okay. So
Through the chair, through the chair. The applicant can probably speak to that better, but there was back and forth between staff and the applicant on finding a more suitable location. Originally, we had suggested further up. However, there were more logistical issues with that. So this is what was arrived at, which is why it's specifically conditioned to say that the 12.3 meters only applies to that one area. It does not mean that the entire driveway could be 12.3 meters. In addition, where that additional parking space is, we've specifically conditioned it to say that it has to be screened from public view.
But how does this parking become a functional parking space?
Through the chair, so are you saying that you can't pull into the space, or?
Well, my understanding is that with the configuration now, there could be other cars in front of it, so that I'm not sure how someone could actually exit from this parking pad directly to the street without having to move another vehicle on the property.
Correct, but staff don't look at the private, chauffeuring around of cars on a driveway. That is entirely up to the owner, which is no different than, if a single family dwelling has multiple kids who also have cars at home, cars have to be moved around. So
the issue that you're dealing with is you're making you're finding provision for the legal number of parking spaces on the property.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. The other question that I had related to the resolution that's at the back end. Sarah, that would be page 7. I think it's page 7 of 13 in the information package. So I guess 3 pages later, and it's in the conclusion. So my question relates to the, in the recommendation report, it was basically saying it's minor in nature, it's desirable for the appropriate development and use of this property, the property, and in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. But there's commentary earlier in the report that's basically saying that the provisions of the municipal official plan and zoning bylaw have been overridden by the provincial policy. And what I'm looking at it is, should we include in here that it's in keeping with the intent and purpose of the provincial policy, the municipal official plan and zoning bylaw? I'm looking at, is there some good reason why we would keep it? It would actually reflect more with part of your commentary on the staff report. Is there some issue with making that suggestion, or should it be sufficient to say it's in compliance with the official plan and zoning bylaw?
Through the chair. So, I mean, there's still portions where in the report we explain how it's still meeting the intent of the zoning provision or just official plan policies. So I don't think it's not appropriate to say that, but I understand what you're saying. So if you suggest other wording, if you were going to make a motion, staff would be open to that. I mean, you could say something along the lines of, it meets the general intent and purpose of the official plan or zoning bylaw where applicable and as superseded by provincial policy, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, Ken, or others on the committee?
Nothing from me, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Brian, you're good?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, then I'll look for a motion from the committee. Again, we're on application A1923.
So this is a motion to put it forth on the table, and the decision is based on the voting.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so I will put forth the motion to approve minor variance A19/23.
Okay, can I get a seconder on that? We'll still be voting, so the seconder just, thank you, Ken. This gets us to a voting state. All right, any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair, is it possible to include the wording that Eric had suggested in the resolution at the back end?
Okay.
As superseded by the.
Yep. Fair question. I'll point that back to Brian as as it was his motion. So Brian, are you okay with that?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. All right. There's no other further discussion, so then I'll look for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve application A1923 for 10 Flowers Crescent, please raise your hand. Seeing none. All those not in favor of application A1923, please raise your hand. Okay. The application has not been approved this evening for 10 Flowers Crescent as with a vote of 0 to 4. So the motion's been defeated. All right, so that takes us to the official end of the agenda, but there was one that we volleyed to the end. So this was for, I believe, McGill Drive, 39 McGill Drive, application A1823. if there's, do we know, Sarah, if the applicant is here now? Or
Yes,
registered?
they were. I saw them. I'm just going to do a quick scan here. Yep, I'm going to enable them. I think they might have missed the preamble about how to request to speak, so I've just prompted them to unmute themselves.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm here. It's Mohammed.
Okay.
39 Good evening, sir.
Perfect. Good evening, sir. So welcome to the Town of Ajax Committee of Adjustments meeting. I will give you a chance to, the committee has received a staff report that outlines the town's position or planning staff's position rather on the application, and they are recommending approval based on 4 conditions that you see on the screen right now. If you're able to see the screen from the town staff, that the subject variants apply only to the property municipally known as 39 McGill, as illustrated in the figures contained herein, or this decision shall become null and void, that an unobstructed pedestrian path of travel to and from the uncovered steps be maintained at all times or on the subject property, or the decision shall become null and void, and the owner applicant maintain existing drainage on the property, or this decision shall become null and void. And number 4, that the owner applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. Do you acknowledge these conditions, Mr. Solomon, and do you have any questions about them?
I'm acknowledged, yeah. I'm acknowledged and everything's here.
Okay, and you're aligned, correct?
Yes.
Okay, could you tell us maybe a little bit about the application, why you're seeking the minor variance application from the committee today?
Yes, minor variance applications we applied for because of that wherever the deck was created, the landing area, because just underneath it's electrical panel and the big plumbing lines are going, so we cannot bring it down. So then the whole electric panel and whole wiring has to be a shift, and there is no other option, the plumbing line and electrical panels to move. So that's the whole reason, like, we had to go for the deck is a little bit whatever the original level in the drawings, and it's going a little up. Yes.
Okay, and just for clarity, Mr. Solomon, this has already been constructed, correct? As we saw in the pictures in the staff report?
Right. That's right,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for that. Committee members, I'll open it up to you to see if there's any questions. Ken?
Mr. Chair, through you, I have a question. I believe it's the last page. It's the picture in the last page of the staff report. Sarah, if you're able to move across there.
So it'll be figure 3.
I believe it is figure 3. No, it's the next one. Okay.
No,
So
that was the one. That was the one.
Yeah.
There we go.
So what I'm looking at with this picture, I don't know if I'm seeing an optical illusion or not, but what I have a sense is the left side is looking one way at the landing. The other side is looking at the landing from a different perspective.
Yeah.
But
So
I'm looking at, there's
the
a
one on
fence.
the left, Ken, sorry, the one on the left, I think maybe it'll help because I did the exact same thing when I was looking through
Yeah.
the report. The one on the left is looking into the backyard. The one on the right is looking towards the street.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the picture that's looking towards the street, is the fence down or is it on an angle?
Oh, it is an angle picture, I think. Oh, sorry, I should not interrupt.
No,
the
go
part
ahead,
I'm
Mr.
looking
Sullivan.
at it is, I didn't know whether or not it was reflected. If it's an as-built condition, has it been built so that the fence is on an angle, or is it that
No, fence is
a
fence is
matter of timing?
no fence of straight. I think it's the picture angle was kind of, it's not, maybe somehow, I don't know, the picture wasn't taken and that's not right, but fence is straight. Fence is straight. If you see the picture, what you can see the backyard, if you look at that and you can see the fence, it's straight line there.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was one part that was giving me confusion. So but, thank you very much for clarifying.
Thank you, Ken.
Any other questions from committee? Okay, Eric, I know when we were on this much earlier, I did ask you whether notice was served. Let me just re-ask on that as well. For 39 McGill, was notice served and whether there were any responses?
Notice was served and there was some correspondence and opposition which was provided to the committee.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for reminding me. All right, any other questions from committee members for the applicant or staff?
I have a question.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Given that it's a raised platform to get in, and there's I guess it's a motion controlled light above the door. Can you give further consideration to making sure you're lighting the stairwell or the stairways more than you're lighting, having the light directed downwards versus up, just to make it easier on your neighbor?
Absolutely, absolutely. That can be done. I already discussed with Dan about that, and that light actually it is downwards. You know, this LED lights, it's a little brighter. I think that's going. So that's maybe I had to change that light to with the shed something, so that the street focus towards the the stairs instead of brightening whole area. So that's I already talked to Dan. I don't know. He mentioned about that light can be taken care. So I can remove that and put in a different light with the shed and directly focusing toward the steps. That can be done. Yeah.
Okay. Brian, are you okay with that answer?
Yep, I'm fine with that answer, and I'll just have a follow-up. I'm making the assumption, since we live in Canada and we get a lot of snow, that shoveling your way to the walk from the front, you are bringing the snow out on your yard, and or you're putting it in your backyard. Would that be a correct statement?
Are you talking about the driveway or the walkway?
I'm talking about the walkway.
Yeah, walkway that is going to now where it is basically going to push it back to the driveway, and between two, I don't know, that picture is not there. So between two space of my neighbor and mine. So in the middle, it's like a curb. So that's a drainage towards the street level. So we can push it to our driveway, and I in my space instead of going to the neighbors.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I'll have a quick question as well. So, Mr. Solomon, I know you mentioned in your quick briefing at the top that you ended up building above grade because of the fact that there was major plumbing lines and an electrical panel at the spot within the building. Were you not aware of that when you originally got the building permit on this?
No, it's actually what happened when the building permit was issued, and then the contractor was called, and basically the contractor saw that he didn't notice much about the height things. He's already built it. So basically, it's supposed to go down the way engineer calculated the measurement, and the contractor when the engineer is designing in the paper, but when the contractor himself came, but practically says it is very hard things to do. So that's the modification, because straight on top of that was the washroom is there, and the second floor washroom drain is also coming the same line. So practically when they start work, and then he find it is difficult, and then I didn't notice also, and he's whatever the way he found, and he built it. So then the later we realized that it when they built it, the deck, and that is above the height. So i.e. between it's the contractor who already built it. Then when the inspector come and he mentioned it and then says, okay, this is not matching that. And then we realized everything was why I asked the contractor how he did this. I said, we don't have other option because engineer is designing the paper, but practically doing here. And then the problem what this occurs, so that I don't have no other option to do this is the way. And then at the end, we realized this is the situation challenge we're facing, and then we applied for the minor variance.
Okay. All right. Any other? Thank you for that, Mr. Solomon. Any other questions from committee members? Okay, seeing none, then I'll look to see if any of my fellow colleagues would like to put a motion for 39 McGill application.
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt. We did have one registered party to speak for this application. They are on the call, but I just wanted to provide them the opportunity. They haven't raised their hand, but I know it is a little bit later into the evening. So just wanted to pause for a moment to see if they did want to speak.
I appreciate that, Sarah. Thank you. So if, again, to Sarah's point, if you're here to speak, if you could raise your hand electronically, of course. And again, if you're on the phone, it's *9. If you're in front of your computer, it's Alt and the letter Y as in Yankee to be able to raise your hand.
Okay, it looks like that individual has chosen not to speak.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. All right, so then I'll look for a motion from fellow committee members. Ken?
Chair, I would move that we approve the minor variance for application A1823, 39 McGill, subject to the conditions as recommended by staff.
Okay, and thank you, Ken. Can we get a seconder? Bernadette, thank you. And any discussion on the motion as presented? Seeing none. All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, so the application has been approved for in favor, 4 out of 4. This is for application A1823, and it will be subject to the appeal period, as we mentioned at the top of the call. Thank you, Mr. Solomon. All right, so that, I believe, brings us to a close on our application portion of our agenda. So I will look for any other or new business to be brought forward by committee members or town staff. Okay, seeing and hearing none, then I'll look for an adjournment of this evening's meeting. Bernadette with the motion, thank you. Seconder? Ken, thank you. And all those in favor? Okay, motion to adjourn has been carried. Thank you and have a good evening.